Alright, welcome to another edition of Weekend Work. Now this is sort of a follow-up video to the video that I did yesterday. And I realized after watching what I put together that I didn't really go into very much detail as to what we did. I just kind of set up a shot, talked about what we were going to do, set up another shot, showed what we did, and then moved on. So this is going to be a little bit more detailed. I have a 2008 SV650S, and I am changing the rear shock this week. For this project, you're going to need a few tools. I highly recommend getting a frame stand for your rear swing arm. If you can get a front stand for your front wheel, that will also help. I also used a floor jack, a 3-ton floor jack, and jack stands. And what I started out doing was removing this clip from this pin, take the clip out, pull the pin, flip the pegs over so that way they don't go up, they go down. Then what you can do is, and I use a 2x4 underneath the bike to put on the jack stand, or the floor jack, and lifted the bike up with it on the frame stand. That gives you a little extra support when you're jacking it up. I also highly recommend you have somebody help you with this, because having an extra set of hands really helps, especially later when you're trying to break bolts. Alright, here we go. We've got them flipped around. This side was a lot easier to do because the pin is a lot longer on this side. The other side was a little tougher because there's not a lot of play to get pliers under there. So we've got that flipped over, so we're going to put it up on jacks now. Like most projects, the first thing you can do is you take out your plate, your side plate, and then remove the seat. I'm not going to do that because I've already done it and I don't have my tools out here. I'm just kind of going over what needs to be done. So take this off, take your seat off, flip your pegs over, and you're ready to go. Once you have the bike supported, what you'll be doing is you'll be removing 3 bolts. The first one is here at the bottom. This is the first one you're going to take out. That's kind of tough to do because there's a lot of tension, and you're going to need to put some tension on the swing arm in order to make it work. Once you get those off, there's another bolt right behind it. That's the bottom bolt for the shock, so you'll be taking that off as well. And the top bolt, sorry for the shaky cam, but the top bolt is up there. And it's a little difficult to get to, but if you have a socket with an extension, it's not too bad. But that's the top bolt, and then down here is the bottom bolt. One of the things that's going to happen was when you remove those bottom bolts is that you're not going to have any support for your swing arm. So what ended up happening with me is my wheel basically slammed up against the bottom of my fender. Not quite, but just enough to really jack up my license plate, which is how I knew I needed to change my shock anyway, because I kept bottoming out on it, and my license plate would bend and break loose from its bolts. In fact, one of the times it rolled it, so that was fun to unroll. So that's really what's going on there. But you need to have something to support the back of the bike. I didn't have it. It's not a huge deal. I think that's why a lot of people recommend that you support your bike with a hoist from above, which if you do it inside of a garage, that works nicely. In order to help prevent the bike from compressing down, somebody suggested I put a shovel handle through the rear set here, the rear pegs, and then put some books in between the shovel and the wheel. Or maybe it was, anyway, so that way it doesn't compress when you undo it. Highly recommend that. I didn't do it, but all it ended up doing was messing up my license plate. It's possible if you have a rear fender that you might jack that up too. I don't have a rear fender, so I didn't really end up damaging too much. Right now we're loosening up the top. It's a loud scooter. Loosening up the top shock, and then there's also one down right here. So we're just working on that right now. We ended up not putting the bike on the rear pegs for now, just because we got to have pressure on the swing arm to get this done. Alright, well, we ran into a little bit of problems. We have the jack stands holding the pegs up, but we had to take those out earlier because we loosened the top, but to get to the bottom to loosen it, we had to undo the dog bone, which you can see right there. And that was not an easy thing to do. Now, what I'd been reading and what I saw was that if you have the frame stand on the swing arm, you should be fine with loosening that. But the problem is there's still a little bit of pressure on that dog bone, so you have to. We use the jack to put a little pressure underneath it and a breaker bar. Got that bolt out after we put some pressure on it and pulled it out, and as soon as we pulled that out, the dog bones dropped and then the suspension disappeared. The rear wheel went all the way up, which I wasn't quite prepared for, but you know, hindsight's 20/20. So the next step is we're going to loosen the bottom shock bolt and pull out that top shock bolt there and pull that shock out. So that's where we're at now. Alright, there's the old shock. Once we got the bolt out of the top and the bolt out of the bottom, it just fell right out and we dropped it out. This is off an 07 ZX14 and it should slide right in there. The only thing was we had to get a beefier bolt to go through it. It's a M10 1.5 by 50. Right now we're working on these screws that are under here. There's two under here and I think there's another one in here somewhere. And that's really just to take this heat shield off and get the new shock in. Okay, this is one of the tougher parts to get out. This is the heat shield. It goes between where the shock sits and the bottom of the battery case slash toolbox holder is. And basically the way that this works is it sits in the bike like this. What I recommend is getting a Phillips bit for a drill and then putting a 1/4 inch socket over the end of that. That'll give you a little bit of leverage. There's not a lot of room in between where the bottom is and where you need to get this. These two screws you have to get to from the outside, but the top one here you have to get to from the seat area, and it's all pretty tight, and you need a little bit of, you just get in there with that socket and that bit and you just pull that off. Once you get all of that done and you drop that other shock, it just drops out. It's real easy to get out. It's harder to put this one in, but you basically just put it in there and twist it 90 degrees until it fits up in there. This reservoir is why you take this heat shield off. Some people just cut the heat shield out so that little reservoir fits in there, but I didn't want to mess with it. It's kind of a thick plastic and it would take some work, and I just didn't have time yesterday to do it. But that's what you do. And once you get in there, you can set that bolt, that top bolt through there, let it hang. And then once you get that top bolt mounted, the shock just hangs, and then you can maneuver this knuckle up into place and slide that bolt in and tighten it in. Now this bolt isn't the stock bolt. Because of this shock is a little wider, you have to get a different bolt. This is an M10 1.5 by 50 millimeter bolt, and then a matching locking nut on the other side. Okay, this is the other side of the knuckle on the bottom of the shock. You can see where I put that in there. There's not a lot of clearance between this dog bone and this bottom of the shock. Not a lot of clearance over here as well, so you need to have an adjustable wrench or a box end wrench to put on that to hold. And this is where you really need a lot of help because it's hard to get in here and do both of them at the same time. And that's where you'll probably need a breaker bar and a strong friend. But basically you put that in, and then what you'll do is these dog bones will be hanging down, and then this is where you put a 2x4 on the bottom of this on top of your floor jack, and you wedge that in there and you lift the bike up basically by this knuckle until you line these two holes up, and then you slide the bolt in and you tighten it down. I believe this side is a 14 and this side is a 17 millimeter. You'll just, if you have a socket set, a metric socket set, you should be set as far as getting it all fixed up. Then once you get all these tightened, you just make sure it's good, and then you can take it all off the jacks and the stands, and you should be good to go. All in all, it took me and my friend probably about 90 minutes to complete this entire job, but it's mostly because we had issues with breaking the bolts free, and then also I had my 6-month-old kid out here too, so he needed attention for a little bit. So all in all, I think if you have a friend and no interruptions, you could get this done in less than an hour, maybe 45 minutes tops. Put it all together, take it out for a test ride, and see what you think. And that's pretty much it. This is the SV650S. I didn't take any pictures of before how it sat. I know it feels a lot better, but it didn't make enough change for me to really notice it. When I really notice it is when I get on the gas and I take off, because the back doesn't drop as much when I hit the accelerator. And one of the side effects is wheelies. So if you drop that clutch, you're bringing that front end up a lot easier because the rear end is a lot stiffer. I haven't given it a lot of road time to really figure out what's going on, but it doesn't change the characteristics so drastically that it's out of hand. It's enough that you can notice some changes, but not so much that it really makes you have to adapt your riding style. Now that may change once I get in there and change the rebound and the damping, so we'll see. So hopefully this video really helped you with changing out your shock. If this did help you, be sure to hit that like. I'd appreciate it if you subscribe. I'm trying to build this channel up so that way I can help out others, and also maybe make a little side cash while I'm doing something I love. All right, thanks everybody. Y'all have a great weekend.